Someone walks into a hospital and says, "I am turning into a wolf." The lights are bright, the staff are trained, and no one in the room believes in curses. Yet the person saying it is frightened and sure. That moment is the doorway into clinical lycanthropy. It is where a very old story and a very real mind meet in the same body. Clinical lycanthropy is the name for a rare state in which a person truly believes that they are becoming an animal, most often a wolf. It is not a joke. It is not someone doing a character. It is not someone who just likes wolves. It is a person reporting what they experience. They may tell people their face is lengthening. They may say they can feel hair on their skin. They may growl or try to bite. On the outside, nothing in the body has actually changed. On the inside, the person's perception has moved away from human and toward animal. This belief almost never appears by itself. It usually sits on top of another problem in the mind or the brain. Many recorded cases happen during psychosis. Some happen during a very high mood state, such as mania. Some happen when there is a neurological issue that affects how the brain knows what the body looks like. Because of that, clinical lycanthropy should be seen as a layer on top of an episode, not as a standalone condition. The wolf is the final piece to arrive. A typical case looks something like this. A man is brought in because his family are worried. He is restless and confused. He tells staff that his mouth is stretching forward. He says his arms are covered in hair, even though they are not. He begins to make low animal sounds. When the staff calm him and speak with him, he explains it clearly. He says, "I am becoming a wolf." He is treated for the episode. His thinking begins to clear. As it clears, the wolf belief fades. His body never changed. What changed was the way his mind was reading the signals from his body. He already knew the story of people turning into wolves. So when his mind needed an explanation, it used the story that was ready. That single example shows the whole pattern at work. First, something in the mind or in the body feels wrong or unfamiliar. Second, the person's thinking tries to explain what is happening. Third, culture supplies a ready-made answer. Strange perception. Search for meaning. Werewolf story. Biology makes the experience strange. Culture makes it a wolf. It is worth asking why the wolf appears so often. Out of all possible animals, why is this one chosen so easily? The mind under stress likes complete stories. It does not want to invent a new myth from scratch. It reaches for what is vivid and familiar. In much of European and Western culture, the werewolf sits right at the front of that shelf. It is already a symbol of a human who has crossed the line into animal. It already has rules. It already has a look. It is a perfect container for the sentence, "I do not feel human right now." In other cultures, people in similar states have reported becoming tigers or hyenas or other feared animals. That tells us the inner experience begins in the person, but the choice of animal is borrowed from the stories around them. This is not completely separate from ordinary life. People often say, "I snapped," or "I was not myself," or "something in me took over." In those moments, a person separates their everyday self from a sudden, older feeling. They do not believe they have changed species, but they do talk as if one part of them stepped back and another part stepped forward. Clinical lycanthropy is that same move, but turned up to full volume and then believed literally. There is a simple way to feel how the story part of this works. Think back over the last year and pick 3 nights that were intense. Maybe there was an argument. Maybe there was frightening news. Maybe there was a dream that would not let go. Now notice how easy it is to imagine those nights as special or strange or somehow marked. The feeling came first. The story came after. Clinical lycanthropy uses the same order. A mind is flooded with odd sensations. Then the mind chooses a story to explain them. To see why the sensations can be so convincing, it helps to look at the body's map. The brain keeps an internal picture of where the body is and what shape it has. That is how a person can touch their own face with eyes closed. Under certain conditions, that map can be distorted. Some people after injury feel a limb is not theirs. Some people feel their hands change size. During sleep states, people can feel that they have left their body. If a brain that is already under strain suddenly misreads the jaw or the skin, and if the person has seen many images of a human face turning into a snout, then it is easy for the mind to say, I know what this is. I am transforming. This connects to something older in humans. People are good at control, but that control rests on sleep, safety, and balance. When a person is tired, sick, overexcited, or frightened, the older animal parts of the brain can feel closer to the surface. That is when people pace, guard space, raise their voice, or act on impulse. None of that is supernatural. It is mammal behavior showing through. The werewolf has always been a way to talk about that shift. Sometimes the animal steps forward. Clinical lycanthropy shows what it looks like when that shift is not only felt, but named. Folklore often ties the change to the full moon. In those stories, the signal comes from outside. The sky becomes bright, the world is more visible, and the creature changes because the time has come. In clinical lycanthropy, the signal comes from inside. The change is linked to a rush of energy, to a distorted body feeling, or to confused thoughts. The mind says, "This must be the moment." In both cases, there is a human desire for a rule. People like to be able to say, "The change happens here and for this reason." Rules make frightening behavior easier to live with. Rules are actually a big part of this. The most famous werewolf stories have full moons, bites, and silver bullets. That is a clear set. It gives people a way to prepare and to fight back. A person in clinical lycanthropy will sometimes do the same thing inside their own mind. They will say, "It happens at night," or "It happens when I'm angry," or "It happens when I feel my skin crawl." They are building a schedule for their own wildness. It looks strange, but it is the same logic. Put the scary thing on a timetable. Then you can live next to it. It is important to see the darker path this could take. Today, a person who says, "I am a wolf," can be brought to care. There are names for what they are feeling. There are treatments for the episode that is sitting underneath the wolf story. As the episode fades, the belief often fades with it. Several centuries ago, there would have been no such path. A person who bit, howled, or claimed to be an animal could have been taken to a priest or a local court. The same words would have been heard, but the response would have been different. It could have been called possession. It could have been called a pact. It could have been called a danger to the village. That is one way real people ended up in werewolf accusations. The mind was doing something we can describe today. The story around it was harsher. This shows something powerful about stories. They do not just sit on top of life. They steer it. The werewolf story is so strong and so complete that a person in crisis can live it from the inside. They can howl. They can say, "I change," and they can feel it. When the crisis ends, the belief can end. If a story can push an illness in one direction, a different story can help pull it back. Naming something as a mind state is kinder and safer than naming it as a curse. This topic also fits into a wider human habit. Many cultures tell stories about people putting on animal skins, rubbing on special ointments, joining spirit hunts, or changing shape in dreams. Those are all ways of talking about shifting from one state of being to another. Sometimes the shift is for strength. Sometimes it is for revenge. Sometimes it is for escape. Clinical lycanthropy looks like those stories being activated inside one person without a ritual. There is no skin to put on, there is no potion. There is only a mind that has said, "I am that animal now." It helps to mark the borders clearly. Clinical lycanthropy is not the same as people who enjoy wolf imagery. It is not the same as people who identify with an animal in a personal or spiritual way. It is not chosen. It is not playful. It is a stressful, unplanned state that appears during other symptoms. Keeping that clear makes room for compassion. At this point, the simple formula is worth repeating, because it explains almost every piece of this. Something in the brain or in the mind felt wrong. The person looked for a story to make sense of it. The culture handed them the wolf. That is why most cases look so similar even when the people are different. Now imagine that same person in a different time. Not in a hospital, but in a small town with little medical knowledge. Imagine them growling or biting or saying, "I am a wolf." The people around them would have had only the stories they knew. They might have said, "This is a werewolf." They might have said, "This is evil." The behavior would have been the same. The interpretation would have been far more dangerous. That is the bridge from mind to myth to punishment. Clinical lycanthropy does not prove that people can truly become wolves. It proves that the idea of becoming a wolf is strong enough to live inside a person who is already struggling. It proves that animal instincts in humans are easy to frame as, "I became something else" when control slips. It proves that stories and symptoms can mix. And it reminds us that the safest response is the one that sees the human first. From here, the next question becomes clear. If one person can believe this and act on it, what happens when an entire community believes a similar story? That is where the history of werewolf trials sits. That is where fear, law, and myth meet. This chapter has been about the inner wolf. The next chapter is what happens when a whole community believes the wolf is real. That is the werewolf trials. If you want that as soon as it drops, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part of the series. I'll see you in the next one.